GMOs that allow you, and this is where science, technology, and innovation now begins to play a very major role, that allows you to now have seeds that are, weather resistant, insecticide resistant, drought resistant, and all that. Now, those seeds have gone through a lab. They are genetically modified organisms, okay? So it's important everybody knows that. But you now introduce them into the earth, and then there is this synergy between, that earth it grows in, and it resists a lot of, the natural factors that would have made it not, yield.
In the words of General Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida, he is a retired Nigerian army general and politician. He served as military president of Nigeria from 1985 until his resignation in 1993. He once said, "The challenge, as we saw in the Nigerian project, was to restructure the economy decisively in the direction of a modern free market as an appropriate environment for cultivation of freedom and democracy and the natural emergence of a new social order." Now, our last quote is from APJ Abdul Kalam. He is an an Indian aerospace scientist and statesman who served as the 11th president of India from 2002 to 2007. He once said, "Economy forced me to become a vegetarian, but I finally started liking it." All right, let's see how all of this could relate to what we will be discussing today. Very warm greetings and welcome to D Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. I am Annabelle Ojin. Now, when other African countries or African nations refer to Nigeria as the giant of Africa, it suggests that Nigeria is widely acknowledged as being greater, more eminent, more significant, more powerful, exceptionally large, and strong when compared to other African countries. Nigeria is Africa's most populated country. Nigeria has a wealth of mineral resources, including crude oil, coal, zinc, semi-precious stones, and gold, just to mention a few. Now, we also have an abundance of human resources. Nigerians are not lazy, and we sure do have abundance of human resources. Now, the moniker, Giant of Africa, is a very prestigious one to bestow upon any country on the African continent, and the significance of the label has led Nigerians and non-Nigerians alike to ponder what it is about Nigeria that qualifies her as such. Now, the term Giant of Africa was given to Nigeria mostly because it has the continent's greatest population. This metaphor, however, may be used for more than just the population. There are several compelling reasons why Nigeria is regarded as Africa's giant. For example, her economy. So, my guest on the show today is Dr. Emeka Okengwu. He is a development economist, and we're about to take a journey through the Nigeria's economy in 2022. Do stay. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. Now, let's get down to business. And we have a guest here in the show today. He is Dr. Emeka Okengwu. He is a development economist. It's good to have you on the show again.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
Likewise. All right, now let's get straight to discussing Nigeria's economy. Nigeria's inflation rate has actually jumped from 20.77% in September 2022 to 21.09% in October 2022, and hit 17-year high as the country battles with soaring food prices, and that's according to the NBS. The rising inflation rate was caused by importation costs and high energy costs, and also surging food prices, amongst other things. Now, is that the only indicator, Dr. Emeka, what actually brought what you bought for 100 naira in the market yesterday? When you go back to the market, you're buying them for 1,000 naira. So is that the only indicator for this surge that we find?
Well, you see, I think what you need to do, I think, I don't know if it was me and you that had that conversation about dollar affecting pure water. Okay, and let's take it from something as elementary as pure water. Why would dollar affect pure water? Okay, dollar would affect pure water because almost every ingredient you need in producing pure water is dollarized. Okay, from those pumps to those machines to the cars that you use in distributing to the label, to the sachet itself. So it's all about discounting against your primary currency. And that primary currency is the dollar. Okay. And this is happening because we've not seen the imports of localizing, or reversing what we call either localizing your technologies or reversing your engineering process. Okay, so that as much as you can, if you're not able to, at least when you talk about this, okay, maybe I should also take it to what they call the import substitution model. Now, the word substitution there means that you're just substituting what you're not able to, produce locally. But the moment you become import dependent, which is basically what we are tilting, unfortunately, to be, because by the time, you stretch the value line, you find out that ultimately, the primary goods are all dollarized. So that would be a very major indicator. The second will be the lack of your access to produce your own food. Okay, it is just not because farmers are not able to go back to the farms. It is also because of the challenges of desertification and climate change. Okay, we're not getting yields. We're still dependent on the rain-fed agriculture. The rains are no longer coming when they should come. The weather has run out of a tangent. But the question will be, how come, other developed countries that were importing these foods are also not facing the same challenge? It is because they are not doing what we are doing. They are doing what they call STI. And what is STI? They are now beginning to apply science, technology, and innovation in food production. So it is no longer agriculture. It is now food production. Okay, and the difference between what we do in Nigeria, which is farming, and what they do is that they don't need land, as the primary input to be able to be food sufficient. Okay, what they need as primary input is technology. Okay, because now they do soilless agriculture, they do vertical farming, they do virtual farming, they do drip technology. And these are, in fact, they even do what they call grow bags. A lot of it's trending in the social media. You see yams, somebody lives in an 800 square meters house, and then his house is sitting on probably 400 meters, and the corner of 500, or 100 meters, he's put 1,000 bags of yams in his compound. And after 3 months, all he needs to do is to leave those bags, throughout the earth, and he has yams in its crudest forms. So these are the things, these are the new trends, and these are the socio-economic that we are yet to come into terms with. Again, that's a very major second factor. Okay, and the third, of course, will be your access to credit. Okay, now, for those who are even importing, at what cost are they buying money? Because people forget that you also buy money.
Exactly.
Okay, so are they at what cost are they buying this money? And
now the problem that you don't even find it in the official market.
That's the cost I'm talking about. So by the time you go to that black market window, because a lot of these items that are basic are off the shopping list or wish list of the CBN. So you need to go to the black market or the parallel market, as you may, to be able to get it. And so at whatever cost that you're getting it is actually why you're having all these inflammatory measures.
So now it actually means that we keep hearing Nigerians, you need to go to the farm, you need to be farmers, we need to go back to agriculture. Other people have actually moved from farming or agriculture to food production.
Yes. You have farms that are in 14, 15, 16, 40-story buildings. In fact, when COVID came, and I'm not talking about even the developed world, around Indonesia and Malaysia, and that's why they're able to flood us with all these medical protocols, herbs and all that. They come in their thousands and millions. They're asking you to invest. People are buying Ferraris because they're investing in phytomedication. Now, these things are not planted mostly in open fields. Okay, they are planted in what would look like Hilton. You could go to a place that looks like Hilton and it's Annabelle Farms.
Oh, wow.
Okay, and all you need to do is that you just press buttons, dressed as pretty as you're dressed, and then you can probably say, oh, I'm a potato farmer, and truly you are. Okay, so this is where hydroponics, agroponics, the world is moving to a point where you no longer need to be carrying hoe and machete. You can do that in your gardening. But the moment you mention commercial agriculture, there are farms that you need to fly for an hour. Okay, so if you can imagine the speed of a jet, and it takes an hour, to be able to circle that farm and then, maybe spray chemicals and insecticides and pesticides, then you begin to understand they're no longer farms. They become what they call belts.
Oh, wow.
So,
okay.
and for the amount of people we need to feed, we shouldn't be talking about farms anymore. We shouldn't be talking about plantation.
But then I hear the local farmer will ask you, how secured are all of this?
Vis-a-vis what?
If you how hygienic or whatever the food that comes out from this kind of farms, because we always have this misconception about technology, digital.
Okay. Oh, great! And I mean, let me imagine you in ShopRite. Let me imagine that you're picking corns, pickles, green beans. I'm certain you do a lot of that. Okay, every woman does. Okay, carrying that bag and then pulling out your card, to pay. And maybe by the time you're leaving that place, you're parted with 20,000. Have you gone to the places that are producing those things you're buying? Have you?
No, not.
So, you see, when people talk about hygiene, there are two kinds of synthetic materials, okay, or what you call the GMOs. Okay, that the GMOs that allow you, and this is where science, technology, and innovation now begins to play a very major role, that allows you to now have seeds that are, weather resistant, insecticides resistant, drought resistant, and all that. Now, those seeds have gone through a lab. They are genetically modified organisms. Okay? So it's important everybody knows that. But you now introduce them into the earth, and then there is this synergy between, that earth it grows in, and it resists a lot of, the natural factors that would have made it not, yield. So there are also the ones you just like these edible plastics that Chinese people are using to produce rice. This is where, technology again should be able to come in so that it can be able to, it's easy to know. I mean, those rice, you just put them in a spoon and try to burn them, you see them melting. Okay, so it's very easy. Now, about hygiene, remember that when you go abroad now, they have what they call the inorganic and the organic. Okay, now people now have choices. All right. Somehow your body is made built like a hospital, and then has these filters that are also able to help you, detoxify, take out poisons and all that and all that. But there has to be a limit to it. So it's all about managing what your process is. But there is nothing wrong, nothing in the least wrong, with inorganic foods that are well processed.
All right, so according to the IMF, a few days ago, they actually warned Nigerians to brace up for higher food prices and risk, especially in 2023, due to the recent floods and then high fertilizer prices. Now, since the recent flood have affected a lot of agricultural productivity, and I know that you're very big on agriculture and farming and the food production. Now, how do you actually deal with this quagmire before it hits us right in the face? Nevertheless, most Nigerians hate to take the word, take precautions or apply preventive measures until the predictions happen, and then we're just like between the devil and the deep blue sea.
Okay, let me answer you by just going back to a country like the UK. There's what they call urban agriculture. Okay, urban agriculture is that they are redesigning their roofs so that you can grow veggies on the roofs of houses. You can Google it after the show. Now, people are getting more innovative. Okay, it's only from where I come from in Nigeria that they say it's only a tree that you say, I'm going to cut you down, and you come back the next day and meet it there. Now, for a human being, you're supposed to be pushing back. That we've lost our land to floods, yes, maybe some poisoning, some saline, some loss of, fertile land, some loss of crops, some this and that. We can also push back. Where are the greenhouses? I just told you the story of planting yams in grow bags. There's nothing you can plant in a grow bag. So imagine if we now decide, okay, what we're going to be doing is let's begin to see how we can put the technology of grow bags, okay, and then use it to begin to now see how we can be able to mitigate this IMS prediction. Because I'm sure whatever it is that predicting is against the fact that we are waiting for the baggy people to go and harvest their yams, put them in small, how do they call it now? Cache. A woman carries about 15 or 16 on her head, and I say, Cache Diana. And she says 10,000. I say, it was just only 2,000 2 days ago. I say, Babu, Aiki Agona. And then you understand. But if you had an Annabelle, okay, who is a permanent secretary, and the law allows Annabelle to be able to get into agriculture, showcasing in one part of her garden grow bags that are growing food. Okay, you probably grow that 1,000 tubers of yams. With a family of 3 or 4, you might need more than 50 of those yams. You'd have some excess that you can be able to pass on to the market. So imagine if 1,000 Annabelles had 1,000 yams.
Oh, wow.
1,000,000 Annabelles had 1,000,000 yams. So you can imagine what's going to be happening.
That's like knock yourself out.
Beautiful. So, so it's us to be able to appreciate that, yes, IMF will give you a prediction based on your realities. Okay, based on your development indicators, based on what it is that they're measuring you against. And that's how they do it. So when they measure development, they look at your hospitals, they look at your schools, they look at your road infrastructure and all that. However, you can wake up and say, listen, you know what? Let us first and foremost begin by going to our primary health care centers. Every village, every community should have a primary health center. Okay, and then it becomes a national everybody put your hands on the till, okay? And let's be able to raise what we can raise. Let's have champions in every village who can produce. I was in an earlier show and I was saying to them that there's a commission, I think an agency they call the National Senior Citizen Center. And I'm saying, listen, until we realize that we're getting to that point where we need to start treating our parents like babies, put them in crutches. Okay, imagine a situation where your mom is in your house and you have to do a 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock show, and you wake up and leave her in that house knowing that in 30 minutes a bus is going to come and pick her up. Okay, and then knowing that you're going to be back home by 9 o'clock, and you know that by the time you get home, your mother would have eaten breakfast, had lunch, had dinner, had her medications, cleaned up, and she's just sitting back home pretty. Imagine that.
Exactly.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So it is for us to begin to get more innovative. And the guy said, oh, no, in Igbo land, the woman will call out. And I say, what about when your mom can't call? What about when she has dementia? What about when she begins to get delirious or something? And how are you going to be getting these people? Because way back in those days, in the villages, you had people who must go to the farm. Now it's difficult to find people who go to the farms, who want to stay back in the village.
All right.
Okay. And if you're not comfortable, it's going to be disrupting you, disrupting the activity of your husband, disrupting everything you're going to be doing. Whereas you can just carry that little child who's become your child, and she goes to a place where people who are professionally equipped to be able to make her happy for the whole day are able to do so. Now, this is what innovative thinking is all about.
Awesome. All right, so now some of these farmers have actually threatened to sue the federal government with regards to the flood and how much it destroyed their farmland, their crops, their rice, and most of them have actually, we know that most of them must have taken loans to start up that farming. Now, judging from that, from the fact that there was a forewarning, and then there's also the provisions for such happenstance via this ecological fund. Do these farmers have a good reason to scream?
Yeah, they do have a good reason to scream, but you're also not doing it the right way. All you need to do is to plead force majeure.
Okay.
And you can only plead force majeure when you also now have the instruments that can allow you to apply your force majeure. And that first and foremost that you insured your farm. Okay, because if you're suing the federal government, you need to show that it was the federal government that directed the floods, into your farmland. But what could happen is that there must be a meeting point. There should be a proper audit of people who've lost farms. And then what usually happen is that such loans, should be written off. Okay, because if you don't, in fact, in other climes, I tell you, farmers are paid subsidy to go to farm. Okay, and each time I tell people about subsidies, we just misapply subsidies in Nigeria, and then inadvertently turn them into price differential instruments. Now, what's the difference? If you apply it at that level of production, okay, it's a lot easier for the farmer to, no matter what cost, he spends, he's happy to spend it, knowing that that differential, will be catered by the time he's getting to the market, because somebody is paid for it. Okay, so everybody who's a farmer, and I keep talking about, with a lot of respect to these people who are struggling to put food on our table, calling them farmers, it's in the real sense of the word farming, just opposed against people who are flying to their farms. Okay, just suppose against a farm you go to, and then you see 1,000 trailers, 1,000 trucks, 1,000, bobcats, doing stuff. It begins to worry me a little that we're mistaking pedestrian subsistence gardening, okay, as national food production systems. That are two different things.
I agree. Also, according to the NBS, they actually stated that no fewer than 133 million Nigerians are currently living in multi-dimensional poverty. And they also report that in terms of proportion of poverty and its intensity, the poorest state includes Sokoto, Bayelsa, Jigawa, Kebbi, Gombe, and then Yobe State. And then the report, among other things, said 2/3 of children aged 0 to 17 are poor and accounted for 65% compared to 58.7% of adults. Adding that this gives rise to sobering reality that over half of all poor people are children. Also, on the flip side, noted that 29% of all school children are not attending school, while 94% of all out-of-school children are poor. Now, economically, does some of these states, including states like Bayelsa State, that we all know to be the oil-rich state, and then that has the proverbial goose that lays the golden egg, are they supposed to be included in this kind of list for you?
Yeah, you see, you need to be able to define poverty, and then what you grade poverty against is usually against access to health, access to education, access to social infrastructure, access to transportation infrastructure, access to energy. These are usually the indicators, okay? And of course, access to educational facilities. Now, because we are failing on all these accounts, is first and foremost as a result of poor planning, which is occasioned by the lack of correct and cogent data.
Okay,
because you see, the greatest challenge we have in Nigeria is that we don't even know how many people, we are, what they're doing, how they're doing it, how many schools we need, because nobody is done, that technical audits, and then just opposed the need for new infrastructure against needs. Okay, so if you remember, there was a time the government launched what they call the NEEDS program, the National Economic Empowerment Development Strategy. And then they brought it down to the states. They should have started, they started at the middle. The first thing you should have done was to start at the CDA level, the Community Development Associations, so that at every point in time, you know how many people there are. That can be the first step in now knowing, first and foremost, what resources that they are living off or living on. Okay, land, waterways, how fertile their soils are, what natural resources they have. And that brings me to a place like Yobe. Yobe is supposed to be one of the richest places or locations in Nigeria. First, Yobe hosts the biggest cattle market in the whole of West Africa, in a place they call Megeteri. Okay, with thousands and thousands and thousands of cattle. And the least cost of cattle today is about 200,000. So imagine if they had value chained, okay, had modernized our markets, okay, into a place where it would have been a modern market where you can even fly, livestock, dead weights, live weights, processed, canned, out of that, support markets. You know how much that will be given? Okay. Now, Yobe also has what they call bentonite clay or bentonic clay, which is a major ingredient that is used in drilling for oil. In a particular location, over 900 million metric tons of that material is there sitting, not touched, been there forever. And this is due to so many other minerals. Nguru wetlands is in Kebbi State. It's one of the biggest wetlands you have in the whole world. In fact, any time you have these birds, doing their seasonal flights, okay, it's supposed to be a world conservation center. And I tell you this, you'll be very shocked that Borno State, okay, has probably one of the biggest of most fertile lands. In fact, the best grade rice that is produced in Nigeria, comes from around the Borno borders. This will equally shock you. Very fertile land. Okay, so it is all about poor planning. So every state you've mentioned.
You mean from the state level?
No, you see, if you're planning nationally, I think there's a lot of disaggregation, okay, between what our national priorities are. I do not see any alignment, between our state development plans and the national plans. Now, all you just need to do is just take, for instance, the Ministry of Agriculture, Federal Ministry of Agriculture's budget on agriculture, and then just oppose it against the states. You'll be shocked that there's no meeting point. Okay, but the people you're planning and actually to feed are in those states.
Exactly.
Now, look at these kids that you're talking about. What does it need to build nutrition? You don't need a bowl of eba. Okay, a pack of fortified biscuits, a small can, okay, of nutritionally supported, milk can be able to give that child all the nutrients the child needs. And these are what companies like Colombia, these are not even, Western countries are doing. That they're entering into fortified, nutritional support. So whatever it is that you're doing, but we're here busy, talking about food, and we're not talking about nutrition.
Nutrition.
Okay, now these are not the same thing. You could eat one biscuit. The guys who go to space don't take pots and spoons there. Okay, they don't take sacks of gari. I mean, go and check when they're loading. You don't see them loading sacks of gari, and they stay there for 3 months, come back looking healthier than you and I. Because technology, again, has made it possible for you to be able to just take what your body needs, okay, to be able to
what your body needs.
Okay, so this is what I think we must begin to think more artistically, more innovatively. It's become very important and critical and crucial that we step out of, our comfort zone and then begin to now, with all these figures you're railing out, 10 million kids out of school, 100 and something million people in poverty. And one thing you have not said, and I thought it's important you mention some other time when you're interviewing somebody, she said that a hungry man is an angry man. And like my mother says, an angry man is a madman. So, technically, you're talking about 120-something
angry
mad men. And
wow.
you need to see this with the amount of road rage. Okay, I was in Lagos yesterday, and I had never seen that experience. This was a young man. I got into the airport, and then he was carrying me, and then he started, struggling for space with this boss man. And I just saw him look at the guy and lift a finger. And the next thing he rammed, I was sitting behind the car, he rammed into the bus, jumped out, opened his boot, carried a jack. And I just sat very patiently. And by the time he finished all his whole matters, I didn't talk to him until I got to where I was going to say, please come down, I'd like to have a drink with you.
Can you imagine?
Yes, I said, I'd like to have a drink with you. And I said, do you know, now you're sitting down here, you'd have been sitting in a police station. Okay, facing murder. Now, I know that this is how it is supposed to be in Lagos, but that's not how it's supposed to be for human beings. Okay, and he did something very surprising. He burst into tears.
Oh, wow.
He said to me, Daddy, thank you so much, sir. I also got emotional.
Oh, wow.
He said nobody had ever spoken to him. I didn't talk. So you see, I understood where he was coming from. Okay, and a lot of us are there. A lot of us are in that space. You'll be shocked how short-tempered you've become.
True.
You'll be very, very shocked. Even amongst you people who work here, I'm certain that, tempers rise a lot more than it used to be before. It's all this reflection of this thing you're talking about.
They're just bottled up.
Yes, because you see that those 120-something million people are probably depending on this, your very poor, salary that's not even able to pay your rent. And then somebody wakes up in the morning, you look at your meter, it's beeping, pim, pim, pim. You just bought one, for 5,000 the other day. You look at your gas, it's finished. You just bought one 2 days ago. And by the time you want to go and rebuttal, they say, oh, it's no longer 12,000, it's now 15,000. So it's important that we begin to also look at mental health issues. Okay, be able to create those facilities where agencies of government need to know that this is just not human beings we're talking about now. You're talking about human beings who are actually tilting.
Oh, wow. Clearly, Dr. Emeka Okengwu has a lot to say in this conversation, and we will unbottle all of that after this time out. See you shortly. Talked about having roads that are tiled and then few kilometers, then you go to the next kilometers, you have dusty roads. Now, does it actually make economic sense if we have a second Niger bridge, but then it's almost Christmas, in fact, it is Christmas, and we might not be able to use the second Niger bridge?
Well, the Niger bridge is completed from what I understand. I think it's just the spokes now, okay, that are saying that they need to complete. I'm happy it's gotten to where it's gotten to. That bridge is critical. But I like to link infrastructure to industrial parks. Okay, I would have been happier if the Niger was dredged and the Niger port was functioning. And there was this intermodeling of the road infrastructure with now the river transport. Okay, and then probably be able to now build a loop to the Asaba airport as maybe a perishable cargo depot or whatever, where you're taking, fresh foods, coming out of the hinterlands of eastern Nigeria through the gateway of Asaba into the international markets or local markets. Now that would make more sense. But if you're talking about the vehicular traffic, so that here people will be able to get home from Onitsha Head Bridge after 30 minutes of getting to that place. That would be nice, okay? But I mean, there could be more to it.
More. All right. If you just joined us, this is The Conversation. We're reaching you from Kaftan's television studio here in the nation's capital, Abuja. If you just joined us, you've actually missed out on a lot, but then you can still join in the conversation. Our guest on the show today is Dr. Emeka Okengwu. He is a development economist. All right, you actually unbottled a lot of things before we went on that break. Now, then just recently also we saw that the reports from Rivers State Governor, that's Governor Nyesom Wike, where he made some disclosures that that left jaws dropping, saying that following the revelation of Governor Wike that President Muhammadu Buhari approved and paid the arrears of 13% derivation to Rivers, Bayelsa, Delta, Edo, and Akwa Ibom, and then some use theirs for projects, and some other states, only God knows what they actually used theirs for. So what are your thoughts on all of this? And then you still have some of these states being considered as one of the poorest states.
That's what I'm saying. Again, it comes to poor planning, and it comes to the failure of the civil societies. Okay, because there is what we call the open finance system in Nigeria, the open budgeting system. You can Google and see who's gotten what. That portal has been there forever. So Wike, they didn't say anything you as a journalist shouldn't know, or anybody who's interested. If you go to the finance website, you see it. You see all releases to the state. Now, it is for every. Remember that you see the citizens are supposed to be the ones who make demands on government, and this is why they now elect somebody who goes to represent them either at the state levels or even at the local government levels where you have a councillors. So this representation is being there, is rooted. Now, but to what extent you're able to call out these people who are supposed to be speaking to you will be where we should start taking this conversation from. Okay, so if you're like a destal about it and say, okay, we don't give a damn. I mean, there's this video I saw trending yesterday where they were sharing 1,000 and you saw these so-called, poor people laughing excitedly and collecting the money and surrendering their voter's card. I thought in a normal climb, those people should be called out, named and shamed. Okay, this is the role of, the community development associations. I mean, you cannot at this time be taking 1,000 naira that might not even take you home, and then you are
like 4 years.
Do you understand what I'm saying? So sometimes let's not blame government. Let us also blame us, who are actually the reason why government is there. All right. So it's again, when you do that, the next thing is everybody has his priorities. There are people who like aesthetics. Okay, at one time you had very beautiful airports. Our airports were being remodeled, glass, bleeze. And I got on the show and I'm like, okay, how come with all these things we have in this country? We don't even have, you can't even take off from airports after 7 o'clock after dark because there are no runway lights. But you come and see these very beautiful buildings, VIP peak, GAT lounge, and all that, and then you can't fly at night. Hello, you don't even have an MRO facility, a maintenance facility. You need to fly your jets, to Ethiopia or whatever to do your C, and your D checks. Now, this is where you do not blame the man who thinks that because I mean, the reason they will say to you, the first thing a visitor sees in the country is the airport. But you're forgetting that most investors will do a back check on your country before they come.
Exactly.
Okay, so what they do is that they pass through that airport. Okay, fine airport. So it becomes a question of the watermelon, green all outside and all mushy, inside. So what's important is this also now should bring to the fore the kind of people that we must procure, okay, when we are talking about public service.
Okay.
All right. And you see that one place we're not very thorough, where you don't bring in HR, exclusive HR, highbrow HR, is naturally now procuring those who promote or can become the face of policies. Okay. You find out that, okay, you want to become a common bank officer. You will need to read get an ICANN, get an MBA, get this. Now, you want to become a governor, okay, who now begins to probably run a lot of the things or determine what that ICANN person can bring to the table. And what you need is a school certificate.
Yeah.
That's the minimum you need to become a governor. And then not to talk about, we no longer even, do any search on the person's integrity, on the person's, as long as a political party can present you, you can run and become whatever. And then the law protects you from prosecution for another 4 years.
It is quite sad. Now, let's still talk about some of the projections that were made by the federal government, because now you recall that the same federal government said that they were they were going to lift an average of 100 million people out of poverty each year, starting from 2020. So after we had the social investment programs, the Empower, the government enterprise and empowerment program, that's the JEEP, which has the farmer money, market money, trader money, all of the monies, and then the national homegrown feeding program, the school feeding program, and also you had the conditional cash transfer. With all of that, economically wise, has all of these policies been worth the journey? Because if you actually promise to remove 100 million people out of poverty, and in 10 years, and then in 2 years, 133 million people are plunged into poverty, does it actually mean that they didn't, so some of these policies were not well checked? Were they just campaign promises?
It's also a failure of unfortunately, of the fourth realm of the estate. Because you see, by your standing, you can actually say, Mr. President, I am a reporter from Kaftan. I have looked at this, your policy, and I want to ask a very simple question. How do you intend to do this? And I'm asking this house, because from your Empower program, since its launch, only 100,000 people has been reached. Only 2,000, only this. And statistically, this is looking impossible. Now, it is only you that might be able to ask that question publicly. The other people who could also ask it will not be your representatives. So you could actually also initiate a town hall and then call whoever it is that's speaking to you in the house and say, listen, we need for you to be able to ask these questions for us based on these statistics. Again, remember that I told you earlier that it is not the failure of investigative journalism or investigative or proactive social societies. Because if you had a library that could be able to interrogate every one statement or policy statement, because remember that policy is not a program. Okay, policy is like a wish list, but you need to be able to now ask them, give us a framework. Let's be able to interrogate this framework of how you're going to be pulling 100 million people out of poverty in 10 years when, one, we've just gotten into a recession. Okay, a lot of people are going to be losing their jobs. Two, we have just come out of COVID. Okay, a lot of industries have been closed down. Three, we have a lot of insurrections that are even stopping people, and agriculture is, engaging over 80% of our workforce. About less than 20% of these people can go to farm, and those who are even going under very stringent conditions. The state is not protecting them. They are negotiating with those who are, holding the forest now, as it were. So how are you going to be doing this? Has anybody asked that question?
But then I asked the national coordinator of the social investment programs, and then he stated that COVID came and then did a lot of wrongs to everybody, and then also messed up their plans. And then also he said that if you go to other countries, most countries come to ask them, how do you people manage to spend 120 billion naira yearly to feed children? That's like the smallest, but then they keep managing.
See, you see, that answer he gave to you should have, I wish you could have him back on the show to say statistically, can you tell us where these children are? Because if you're feeding 120 million children, then you're not feeding them right. What you're giving them is food. What they require is nutrition. So if you're feeding, from your statistics, 120 million children, I would like to do a vox post. Because sometimes you don't take people's word for it. Because I don't know where these 120 million children are being fed if statistics now show that 2 million of those children, might die. 400,000 of them are already malnourished. So can you show us one malnourished child or 10 malnourished children that you've pulled out of that point of death? Where are they?
All right, now let's talk about Nigeria's rising debt profile. According to the Debt Management Office, it said that dwindling revenue and dependence borrowing will make debt servicing difficult for the federal government, as the Director General actually lamented that the Russia-Ukraine crisis had pushed up interest rates on borrowings at domestic and international capital market, thereby making loans and debt servicing more expensive. Even though we recall the federal government said some time ago that debt-wise, Nigeria is actually good to go with regard to borrowing. So is there any need to worry, just as most people have interpreted that, on the streets, they keep telling you that these debts are waiting for your children and your great-great-grandchildren?
It's not in the streets. That's what it is. Look at the moratorium. Look at the years. It's not in the streets. It's our children and our great-grandchildren that will be faced with pain. But I can assure you, that there's nothing wrong with debt. There's everything wrong in what you do with debt. Okay? There's nothing wrong with borrowing. All right? But there's everything wrong in misapplying, money that you borrowed. And the first misapplication will be that you don't borrow money for entertainment. And what's entertainment? Recurrent expenses. Okay, perishables. No, you borrow money to be able to build infrastructure that you require to be able to now draw in foreign direct investments. Okay, now, against that, yes, fine. But you also can misborrow. If you're borrowing and you're not getting enough to be able to complete that infrastructure, okay, from start to finish, so that it can now be engineered, because if you leave it, by the time you come back to it again, You will need to do a technical audit. You will need to probably begin to now do a lot of, back-end work. So it is usually better to loop your borrowing, make certain that you understand it end to end and even allow for contingencies. Okay. And under your contingencies, you can put maybe 30%, extra of the funds you're borrowing against fluctuations. Right now. But by the time you say, oh, let us start. We want to do 100 kilometers of road. Oh, somebody offers you 100 million and 100 million can do 10 kilometers. You say, okay, instead, let it be that our government is working. Okay, we take 100 million. By the time you put that 100 million and it does only 10 kilometers of road, okay, you've created more crisis, okay, than you had when you had that road all bad. Okay, because people just drive 10 kilometers of good road and they're now on a dust for another 90 kilometers. So what they remember, okay, is that 90 kilometers of the horrible road they went through. Nobody remembers the 10 kilometers. Okay, so our debts, again, this is one side of it. But if you can, it's not good to borrow. But you can do bonds, and I keep preaching, this bonds thing. We have resources that can be able to give us, in situ values. A lot of it. A country that has, 3 billion metric tons of coal, about same number for iron ore. We had taken out over 8 tons of gold, and this is statistics from 1980, illegally from just one location. Our gold belt stretches from Nasarawa, all the way to Kebbi, from Osun to Edo to Nasarawa, and it goes on and on, to Kaduna to Kebbi. Nobody's explored it. Manganese, ferromanganese. Now, if we focused on our resources to be able to say, okay, fine, our infrastructure is going to be based on these, metals, okay, being turned into ingots and being traded, in the minerals and metals exchanges, you can raise so much money. Today, proudly, happily, we found oil in another location, in the upper part of the country, oil and gas. I think about 1 billion barrels of oil and 500 million cubic feet of gas. Now, that's huge. That's huge. And if we're able to apply it and apply it well, it could bring a lot of funding to the country. So I think our debt profile, even if it's comfortable against our GDP, the size of our GDP, I don't think we should do debt.
All right.
Okay, except we are able to tie it to very fast, quick, understandable closures that can now be able to now, ignite some other process of bringing investment.
I've seen that our time is fast spent, but I'd like to get your thoughts, because that you talked about having roads that are tiled and then few kilometers, then go to the next kilometers, you have dusty roads. Now, does it actually make economic sense if we have a second Niger bridge, but then it's almost Christmas, in fact, it is Christmas, and we might not be able to use the second Niger bridge?
Well, the Niger bridge is completed from what I understand. I think it's just the spokes now, okay, that are saying that they need to complete. I'm happy it's got into where it's got into. That bridge is critical. But I like to link infrastructure to industrial parks. Okay, I would have been happier if the Niger was dredged and the Niger port was functioning, and there was this intermodeling of the road infrastructure with now the river transport. Okay, and then probably be able to now build a loop to the Asaba airport as maybe a perishable cargo depot or whatever, where you're taking, fresh foods, coming out of the hinterlands of eastern Nigeria through the gateway of Asaba into the international markets or local markets. Now, that would make more sense. But if you're talking about the vehicular traffic, so that here are people will be able to get home from Onitsha Head Bridge after 30 minutes of getting to that place. That would be nice, okay, but I mean there could be more to it.
More, all right. Because you talked about the airport and then our airports. Now let's talk about the emergence of Nigerian Air. after so many years, a lot of people, in fact, a lot of, I'm sure that you've also been looking forward to having the days where we have the Nigerian air like we used to have before now. But then it seems it has actually met with a lot of disagreements, both from having a court order of interim injunction stopping the federal government from going ahead with the commencement of the operation of the Nigerian air, especially from the local airline operators. Now, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, you see, air business is even made touch and go. Okay, the demands are enormous. What you see are beautiful aircrafts flying, but to put those stuff in the air can be very challenging. The amount of diesel that you burn, or the amount of fuel that you burn in a 1 hour trip, can be up to 10,000 liters of diesel, depending on the aircraft. Yesterday, when we were flying into Abuja, we stopped mid-air because they had this VIP movement, and we stayed on air for about 20 minutes, before we got clearance. And I was telling the gentleman who was sitting near me, I said, hell no. Okay, I can imagine the amount of diesel that's been wasted, just because of this. Now, two, maintenance is very critical when you want to run an airline. Okay, if you do not have the appropriate MROs that are tied to what they call OEM certification. OEM means Original Equipment Manufacturer Certification. You will need to start flying your jets, outside the country to maintain them at very high cost. So this is where you need to be a very dexterous business person to be able to manage it. Okay. Otherwise, what killed the Nigerian Airways were free tickets. Okay, director is traveling, free tickets. Director's friends are traveling, director's family. So you could have a trip that you're going to be burning 10,000 liters of fuel, costing close to 5 million or 2 million naira, and then three-quarters of people inside the aircraft ain't paying. Okay, now you're not able to raise the funding to pay your staff, pay your air staff, pay for the maintenance of those aircraft. That's actually where I see the challenge with the Nigerian air thing. But if we are going to be collaborating with people who understand the business, who understand that every penny, matters, just remember that because of some slight increase in the cost of aviation fuel alone, air tickets jumped from 27,000 to where it is now. Okay, 75,000 if you're lucky, 100,000, sometimes up to 150,000. I'm talking about an economy seat. Now, so every seat...
But then we used to have days where it was even 15,000.
Beautiful. Every seat now matters. That's what it means. Every seat is costed against, that very heavy cost of maintenance and all that. So I'm not very unhappy that we've not been able to get the Air Nigeria up in the skies again. I am hoping that when we get it right, when the time is right, we'll surely get up again, yes.
All right. Now let's talk about the CBN's Naira policy redesign, which has actually managed to create a lot of dust and fuss to the policy. Most people, most of the reason behind the hue and cries with regards to the fact that a lot of people don't understand or don't even know the importance or the effect of and the significance of this policy. And that has actually always been their bone of contention and the reason for the massive trust deficit between the government and the governed, because now they just feel like they're not enlightening, the government doesn't enlighten the people properly of these policies and the reason for these policies. Now, they always want to listen to the noise that they hear in the public and then the Free Readers Association and then run with it immediately. Hence, the precipitous decline of our national currency compared with other global currencies, especially the dollar. So what are your thoughts on these policies? Is the reason for this dollar, is this actually the reason for why we have dollar that has actually gone up in the parallel markets? Very quickly, let's get your thoughts on that.
Well, the CBN gave very clear reasons why they needed, but one that's most enduring is that they said you had over 80%, of money in circulation out of the banking system. Now, there's a difference between money in circulation in the banking system and money in circulation out of the banking system. Now, what's the difference? The difference is that out of the banking system means that it's being stockpiled. Okay, and again, if what we see in the social media is anything to go by, if what you see happening with the mop-up of grains, okay, is anything to trust, then they were right. Now, whatever it is you do, there are consequences. Trust me. Now, so there are also consequences for this. And that consequence was where I had issues, with that policy, because I said to the CBN, you are asking people to go back and pay their monies into the banks. 60% of the Niger Delta is underwater. People's ATM cards are underwater. Your own banks that are supposed to be going to are under the water. Where are they taking these monies to? And they said the response, maybe not to my, because a lot of people are also attacking this, is to say, listen, we are going to be making certain that people, who shouldn't be harmed by this policy are not harmed by this policy. So that means I think there's a target. Because if you look at the other two programs that came with it, one, if you're a new company, you can pay in more than ₦1 million cash in the next 3 months. Two, if you're an existing company, you can pay in more than 50 million. And I hear now that even when you're trading, there's some limit to actually what you can also even, cash trade. If this is all about getting all of us, to begin to get into that banking cycle and then begin to slowly pull those who are outside the banking system into it, I'm all for it. If this is to check the excesses of and the cruelty, if you may, of human beings who would stack cash, except those things are photoshopped, they're mind-boggling. Okay, I like to leave it at the realm. Okay, maybe these are photo tricks. If there were anything to believe, then those people should be tried for economic sabotage. Okay, right. So that's my take on it. So on this, to a very, very large extent, yes, I don't like the consequences. I disagree with it totally and completely. But I think we should all swallow this bitter pill if it's going to be for the good of everybody.
So now, still on the CBN's policy, it's been over a year after the launch of the CBN digital currency, that's the e-Naira, and it's yet to gain traction as less than 1% of the entire population is said to be using the local digital currency or even knows about it. So we actually carried out a survey, and a lot of people that we asked said they are not aware of the digital currency. So was this policy timely? Was it properly thought out? Was it a plan properly planned for, or is it just another policy that they bring up and then with so much investment and then later find its way to the bin?
Well, you see, you need to look at your market structure before you start. What kind of market structure do you have? We have our market structures are more informal than they are formal. Okay, it's just in recent times that you're seeing a little bit of formalization. So the first thing you need to do is you should have done a lot of advocacy, and it's not about speaking it in English. You should be able to speak that digital currency and then tell the woman who sells pure water or ogu, how that digital currency can speak to her. The moment you make them understand it, then it's no longer digital currency. It can become ego. It can become anything they call it. Okay, so you must be able to, and I think this is where CBN, failed to get it right. Go to TV, wear suits, talk obobo grammar, and then the people are looking at what are they talking about.
What is he saying?
Because what are they? Do you understand what they're trying to talk about? So if you want to do stuff like that, the first thing you do is to be able to localize it. And localizing it is beginning to now identify local champions. That mama market who doesn't speak one word of English, but speaks perfect Igala, speaks perfect Tiv, speaks perfect Lunguda, speaks perfect Bachama, and then she is explaining this your digital stuff, your wallet, okay? Because remember that the first people who started using wallets were women. If you were born then, part of the dress code allowed for that wallet. There was an inner wrapper, and then there was this wallet,
purse.
Okay, that the purse they tied around their waist, and then you had the other one. So if you saw her removing that first one, she was actually unzipping her wallet. And what betide you to go anywhere near
clothes?
What would you be looking for? Okay, so if you are able to relate that it is the same wallet you're talking about, or somehow, but this now has some scientific component to it, and then mama's phone. Remember, I remember a minister that actually introduced the wallet for fertilizers for farmers. Even the most local of farmers, had where they could press to be able to see and then put this in a language that they're able to understand. And I think that's why it's not had, the level of traction. And probably the back, again, very, very important too, is the back infrastructure to be able to support it. You need a lot of energy, to have stuff like that, running efficiently and effectively. And of course, the blockchain that should be able to support it.
All right, we actually have a lot of social media messages, but we'll not be able to take them because of our time. But let's take this just one. And this person is asking in just a few seconds. We'd like you to answer this question in just a few seconds. Our time is fast spent. Says, is the 2022 Christmas going to be bullish or bearish?
Depends on how you say it. It's going to be a state of the mind. Yeah, it's going to be a state of the mind. It's if you just remember that Christmas is not a time you must drink beer, you must kill goats,
eat rice, eat chicken.
You must buy a new car, you must make new dresses. Then it becomes neither bullish nor bearish. It becomes very sobering.
All right.
Okay, so I think that should be a third option. Okay, so bearish, bullish, sobering. For me, I'll choose sobering.
Okay.
Wash that cloth you have. Remember, it's all about Christ. Okay, remember that the first injunction he made is that if you want to follow me, you must be like me. He had nothing, okay, except his open heart and love for his neighbor. Find that neighbor of yours, go on Christmas and say, Happy Christmas, I wish you well. Okay, hold that person's hand and just pray. Okay, it's enough for Christmas. So for me, bullish, no. Bearish, no. Hellish, no. Okay, but deep, spiritual, sobering, yes, for me. And that's how I'm going to be playing mine.
Awesome. What a fine way to end this conversation. Thank you so much, Dr. Emeka Okengwu. It's always a pleasure having this talk with you.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
All right, viewers, that's all we can take at the conversation today. I'm sure you must have been rightly educated, entertained, and informed. I'll see you again next time. Keep watching The Conversation. I am Annabelle Oji. God bless you and yours, and God bless Nigeria.